Hey, and welcome back to the home gardening series. Today's topic is fall, right? We're transitioning from our summer veggies into at least starting our seeds. Some of our fall veggies like to be started from seeds indoors. So this is all about the fall veggie selections and then a little guide for how you can start them indoors, right? So how do we know? How do we know that this is the right time to be doing this, right? So we should be looking at our growing zones. Hopefully at this point you know what your USDA growing zone is, your agricultural growing zone. I happen to be in zone 8, so I'll use that as an example here for today. But this is kind of a cool color chart kind of showing you, the colder areas, at least of the United States, and the warmest areas of the United States, like in these zones 10 and 11, it goes up a little bit more too. But knowing your zone will tell you the timing for your first frost. What we're looking for is our average first frost. When does it start to get really cold in your area, right? So in zone 8, my first frost comes generally sometime between October 30th and November 30th. Let's take the most conservative date, October 30th, right? And we'll start to count back. I want to start my garden. Ideally, I want to start my winter garden at least 3 or 4 weeks before I think it's going to frost, right? I want to give my veggies a chance to grow up and be strong before that frost hits. So they have a better chance of surviving. That means if I'm going to plant, let's say 4 weeks before then, it would be September 30th. And I want to start my veggies indoors at least a month before that. Right? I want to start them from seed and transplant them outside a month before that frost. So I'm talking August 30th, right? Sometime around the middle of August, I'm looking to start my seeds for zone 8, right? So this is just your guide to when is it appropriate, right? When is it appropriate to start your seeds? So that's just a way to kind of work backwards from your frost date to make sure that your plants will make the frost. A lot of our winter vegetables will live through a frost, right? Things like broccoli and cauliflower and stuff. If you're in Europe, this is the look at your hardiness zones. This map can be a little bit tough to read, but what we've got is a series of colors. The blues and greens are the coldest colors. The reds and oranges are the warmest colors. And we're talking like zone 8 is this color right here, kind of on the edge of Spain and into France. Zone 9, a little bit warmer. Zone 10's around the actual Mediterranean right there. So know your zone and know when it's going to frost. Look up your average first frost and start to work backwards from there, okay? That's a really good way to be ahead of the season for the fall and winter planting. And what are we planting? What are we planting? These are some of my favorite things to grow, my absolute favorite things to grow. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts and collard greens, all of your leafy greens, so anything that you would make salads out of. Root vegetables grow great through the winter as well. Onions, garlic, and everything from the allium family. And then you also have sugar snap peas and things like potatoes and stuff. So many choices, and not a lot of us grow a winter garden. So this can be your chance to diversify and try out something new, growing a winter garden. You want to so going back here just real quick, if you're going to grow vegetables outdoors in the winter, you're going to be in zones 6 and up, right? If you're in zone 5 and below, 5 is you're probably going to need a greenhouse. You need something to keep that temperature up a little bit. No standing snow. If you've got snow on the ground in your winters, you're probably not growing these vegetables outdoors without protection. So zones 6 and up, you are able to grow the veggies that I'm going to talk about here today. Okay, so just double check your growing zones and make sure that your garden is suitable for these types of vegetables. Okay, so looking at that list, this is the comprehensive list kind of what you can grow in the winter. This is another way to look at this. And again, we did this for the spring season, but we want to encourage you to pick more items from the continuous harvesters to grow at home. Broccoli will continue to yield for you throughout the season. Your salad greens are cut and come again, where you're going to get continuous harvest of salad greens, right? Sugar snap peas, really good choice as well. So you can grow the one-time harvest, and we're not discouraging you from doing that, but it might be a more efficient usage of your space to try to grow more from the continuous harvest choices here, okay? And again, we just talked about these kind of a class ago. Hybrids and heirlooms, nice to grow a little bit of both of those items. If you're looking for a little easier to grow, generally hybrids are a little bit easier to grow, and a lot of times your yields will be a little bit better. Generally, if you're a kind of a beginner gardener, we suggest 75% of your garden is going to be hybrid vegetables, and the other 25%, your experimental part, is going to be heirlooms of various varieties. Okay, so kind of think through that as you're choosing your varieties for seeds and what you're going to plant for the season. So very important, as we talked about timing, some of these varieties need to be started indoors. It's because young broccoli plants, very small broccoli plants, cauliflower and stuff, if you plant them directly outdoors, everything likes to eat them, right? Everything likes to eat young plants. So these are the things that we're going to grow indoors and get them hardy. We want them to be big. We want them to be 6 inches, maybe 12 inches tall before we bring them outside into our gardens so that they have some strength under them, right? They're going to be a lot more resilient, and probably birds and stuff won't come eat them. So broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, use some of your salad greens. These could be maybe either way. You could probably do some of the salad greens direct seed outside. So these are the items that you're going to be picking from to start your indoor seed nursery for the fall. Okay, the rest of these are going to be planted direct. You're going to put a seed in the ground for a carrot, beet, and radish. Some of these other items can be planted directly in the ground because they're a little bit hardier and not as many pest problems. Okay, things like onions and garlic generally do pretty good direct sown. I don't usually transplant those outside. Special notes, as the summer season is finishing up, you can start to fill in open spaces. We talked about plant diseases. Maybe you had a problem with powdery mildew, or you needed to remove one of your plants because it died prematurely, right? Maybe you had a blight or a powdery mildew or some other fungal disease. You had to pull that plant out. No problem. It's a good time to start infilling those spaces of your summer garden that aren't very productive. You can very slowly transition your season from summer into fall and winter, okay? And yeah, it is a good time. The end of summer is a good time because it's generally really warm days. So that means seeds will germinate quickly, right? So we're going to end up working towards this planting layout. You're going to see this in the coming classes as well. We're going to kind of show you how to maximize the space in a small garden. This little garden box, we're going to say garden box or a garden size, is just 3 feet by 6 feet. So not all that big. And we get quite a lot of production in here. We got our 6-pack of broccoli, each one taking a square foot. We've got like rainbow chard is a nice choice for another salad green. These are lettuce and different lettuce varieties, arugula and lettuce and stuff all take about a square foot as well. And then you have things in the ground like beets, right? This little section of beets is going to take, you get 9 beets in 1 square foot. It's pretty awesome. And then things like sugar snap peas. We're going to go over this a little bit further later, but I just wanted to give you a quick visual example of what it's going to look like in your garden when you're actually planted. So let's talk about a couple of these varieties. Broccoli, again, my favorite. It's my favorite one to grow, because it tastes so different from what you buy at a grocery store. Homegrown broccoli actually has a really good flavor to it. So give it a shot, right? Definitely transplanting. You're going to start them indoors and bring them outside. It does take a long time. Here's a couple varieties for you to think of. And why, and how do you choose your seeds, right? This is a broccoli. It's a gypsy hybrid, right? Why is it hybridized? What is it helping us with? It's heat tolerant, right? Tolerates heat and resists mildew. So it resists fungal problems and heat, which means if you're living in zones 8, 9, or 10, because keep in mind, these will be productive for us all the way into the spring. So in the spring, when it starts to get warm again, these plants tend to get some problems with powdery mildew, and they tend to bolt, right? Bolting means prematurely finishing, going to seed. So Thinking of your particular growing zone, there are ways to look at seed catalogs and choose based on just your growing zone. So this one's always been a helpful one where I live in a pretty hot area, zone 8. So this is a nice variety that I've chosen to grow over the last few years. Gypsy hybrid. You also get broccolini, and it's really good to diversify your interests, right? When on that other page, most broccoli takes 100 days. This matures in 50 days. All right, so I'm planting so that I'll have quick harvests and then I'll have late harvests, right? I'm trying to really diversify my garden because if I plant all the same variety, I will get almost all of my broccoli at the same time. And I know that I like broccoli, but I don't need 10 heads of broccoli all on the same day. I'd rather have bites of broccoli starting at 50 days, and then big heads of broccoli coming at 100 days, and then secondary florets of production of broccoli all the way into March of next year. Right? So I'm really trying to pick varieties that are really diverse for a lot of different reasons, right? If I plant 4 different kinds of broccoli and I have one that has a problem with powdery mildew, chances are the other 3 varieties won't have that issue. So I'm kind of hedging my bet. I'm playing really smart by planting lots of different varieties, right? And then go crazy, right? Get purple broccoli because you can, right? So this is an heirloom variety, right? So this is the same seeds that were listed in a seed catalog in 1793. So it must have been worth saving those seeds, right? So this is my heirloom choice for broccoli for this season for myself. But I would encourage you to go crazy and grow lots of different varieties. It's so fun to do that, So purple broccoli, why not? You do things for your heirloom choices, for your, out on a limb, trying something new choices. Really shoot the moon and get some really cool colors into your garden. Cauliflower. A lot of times, for beginner gardeners, I say, maybe skip cauliflower only because it kind of harvests once for you. You get 1 head of cauliflower and it takes the same amount of time as a head of broccoli. This one's pretty fast though. This amazing cauliflower, 75 days, right? So this is just to give you an example of what to look for in a seed catalog, right? So this is one of the varieties that kind of looks very general, but it's a fast growing cauliflower, pretty good one. You got Romanesco for varieties. These are actually awesome. They taste really good and they have such a crazy looking head on them. I don't know if you've never seen them, then Romanesco would be a good choice to grow too. And then, like I said, go wild, go crazy, pick colors. Make sure your garden is a happy place for you. And the way that happens is when you go out there to do harvest and it's just so colorful. Colors just make me really happy when I'm going out there to harvest my produce. Okay, so that's it for cauliflower. Salad greens, so many choices. And they take no time till your first set of harvest because they're just leaves, right? You're just harvesting leaves at a time. So, bok choys, romaine heads of lettuce, butter lettuce, red heads, kales and chars, a little bit hardier salad greens. Plant a diverse mix of salad greens and you will not be sad. Okay, these ones will harvest very quickly for you and they will keep harvesting as long as you... we're going to do classes on how to harvest them so that you can't harm them, right? You want to keep harvesting from them throughout the season. So this is a really good choice, right? Easiest to grow, kind of one of my first choices, always wild arugula because it is so hardy. Like you don't really have a lot of pest problems with this stuff. Very easy to care for and probably lots of harvest starting at 35 days. That's just over a month. That is pretty quick for something that you can plant from seed and harvest. Pretty awesome, right? Mizuna, right? So again, shoot the moon, get colorful stuff, try a new salad greens. These are really high in different vitamins. It says vitamin C, right? And has antioxidant properties. Almost anything that's purple has antioxidant properties. So try to diversify your interests. Right? Don't grow all the same things. And then sometimes it's handy to just get a seed pack that has lots of different things. If you don't know what you want, this Wonder Mix has mustard greens, kale, bok choys, has a bunch of different choices inside of one seed pack. You just kind of spread those seeds, see what comes up, and you're going to get a really diverse range of harvest just from one seed pack. Pretty awesome. And then the last example for the seeds here for today. Flashy trout back, right? This is a really good tasting and also really cool looking salad green, right? This is just a staple. I tend to grow this one every year because it's pretty hardy and it does a really good job. All right, so just check. I showed you images from lots of different seed catalogs. You know, try to choose from local companies if you can. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about how to start a nursery. All right, we mentioned that as the season changes into fall, we have to start some of those plants indoors, right? And you want to start them indoors so that they'll be hardy and more pest resistant when you move them outside, right? So here's a couple tips for you on how to start a seed nursery, especially for fall vegetables, okay? This is a list of things that you're gonna need. First, your favorite variety of seeds. You know, go back and take a look at the varieties we talked about for winter veggies. Choose varieties, choose a lot of different varieties, and start with redundancy, right? You want to get enough seeds that you can plant double or triple what you really intend to use in your garden, just because you never know what's going to happen, right? So always, as a good gardener, we overplant, right? We overplant with realistic expectations of what we're actually going to get to harvest. You're going to want some sort of a tray to hold your containers in. This just catches water. You're going to have containers or cups. There's lots of different choices here. For winter vegetables, I typically use 6-packs, like this small image here on the right. Little 6-packs, because it's very handy to be able to plant broccoli and stuff. They don't need huge root zones, right? It's not like growing tomatoes and stuff that you want to give them a little bit bigger pot. Most of these winter plants will do good in a little bit of 6-packs. You're going to need seed starting soil. We're going to talk about that in a second. Some sort of watering can device. Little scissors would be helpful when we talk about thinning. We're going to do that in a class here coming up. Heating pad, optional. If you're starting your winter garden, chances are it's pretty warm outside, right? At the end of summertime, it's quite warm, so you generally don't need a heating pad. You can use one to extend or shorten the time it takes to germinate seeds. Okay, you're going to need some sun. So you either have like a little protected outdoor space or a south-facing window. You can put them right in your south-facing window. And then you will need patience and observation, right? Those are big factors for starting a successful nursery, okay? So seed starter mix, right? You're gonna get your containers, you're gonna put them on your tray, and you need to fill them with something. Seed starter mix is just a lightweight planter mix. All right, I have a little video to show you here and show you what that is. But it's light and fluffy. It retains moisture. It really does not need to have a lot of fertilizer in it, okay? You don't want to generally go out there and just scoop dirt from the ground around your house to start your seeds in. A lot of times that has more clay content and really doesn't have what these young seeds need, which is light, fluffy mixture. All right, so here's a quick video on what seed starting mix is. All right, this is going to be the site of my seed nursery. This is my south-facing window. So this is where I get the best southern sunlight for the energy that my plants are going to need. One of the key ingredients is this seed starter mix. It's a potting mix. Very lightweight. Don't worry about the brand names. You can get any brand that's out there. What is important is looking at your ingredients list. On this bag, my ingredients are peat moss, perlite, dolomite, lime. Okay, so what we really have in this bag is the perlite, or these little white little flakes here. Come in close and look at the little white flakes. Very, very lightweight mix. The perlite is this amorphous volcanic glass. These little white specks, very, very lightweight. The key with those is they have a good mineral content and that they hold moisture. The peat moss is really lightweight, and the lime is just to balance the pH because our peat moss has an acidic pH and the lime has a more alkaline pH. So therefore we get a nice neutral pH for our soil. My next step is to go through and fill all of my containers. You see I have a mixture of 4-inch pots. These are like my 4-inchers for mostly tomatoes. Then I'll have my peppers and hot peppers in my 6-inch. These are my 6-packs, right? And I have a couple of different 6-pack ones because that's what's gonna grow best for my growing situation this year. So the key is, make sure you find this seed starting mix. So you might have seen there's little covers over those gardens. The little plastic covers can help you a little bit with seed germination, right? Because it keeps that moisture in there, creates this really nice, happy environment. You don't have to have them. It just keeps the temperature range really happy for seed starts. So once you have filled your containers, you want to pre-soak the soil. Not enough people do this. That soil, that seed starter mix, sometimes actually pushes soil moisture away from it. So think about soaking that soil before you actually even plant your seeds. And some people actually even pre-soak their seeds. So they put their seeds in like a cup before they plant them, right? So how to plant for best success. This is huge. First, read your seed packs, right? Really look at the back of your seed pack and look at the depth of the seeds, right? You want to know how deep you should be planting it in the ground. A lot of these seeds only planted a 1/4 inch down. That's like the depth of your pinky fingernail. And if you plant them too deep, they don't germinate because they stay too cold, right? So that depth really determines the temperature and how long it will take those seeds to germinate, right? So temperature range is key. If your house is not around that 70-degree mark, you might want to think about doing those heat pads, okay? Something around 70 to 80 degrees is ideal for seed germination. Anytime you're seeding, you want to seed with redundancy, right? So each in those 6-packs, which that image above, this is those little 6-packs, I would still put at least 2 seeds in each cell of my 6-pack, right? If you look here on the top, 2 seeds, 2 seeds, 2 seeds. And then once they've grown up and they're about, 4, 5, 6 inches tall, I would take my little scissors and I would cut one out. So I had only one. But you never know what's going to come up. So always start with extras, all right? So this is an example of trying to grow broccoli plants. I won't go through that part, but you do want to always plant extras and even extra trays, right? Extra trays of plants, because when you bring things outside and they're fairly young, sometimes they get eaten by pests right away, and it's so awesome to just have your backups sitting inside ready to go, right? So think about planting a bit extra this season so that if something does happen, you're prepared for it, right? We want you to plan ahead, and we want you to be successful in what could be your first winter garden, right? Temperature for seed germination. Generally, we're looking at this 77 to 86, right? So if we look down at, let's pick something for winter here. So like spinach. Right? Spinach here is something you might grow. Takes 5 days at 77 degrees to germinate a spinach seed. But you'll notice if it's down at 59 degrees or even colder, it could take forever, or not even, I just don't even think they'll ever germinate, right? Once you get out of that temperature range, that happy, nice, warm temperature range, and look also at the heat. You're not germinating spinach above 90 degrees, right? So you really want to look at the temperature ranges for each of your plants and make sure you're planting at the right time of year. It's generally just trying to keep your nursery at the right temperature range, which is 70 to 80 degrees. How to water your seedlings. So you don't want to overwater and you don't want to underwater. So it really is kind of a game. Starting a seed nursery is a consistent effort, right? We're talking about you should be observing those plants just about every day, right? Because those little seed trays are not very deep, right? So they don't take very much water and they tend to dry out. So you want to make sure that you're not oversaturating and keeping it too wet all the time because you might actually get some insect pests, right? And you might kind of rot the soil a little bit. You might get some rot from the roots. And you can't let them dry out all the way because then they'll just shrivel up and die. So there's this kind of interesting little game you have to play. It ends up being almost every day that you water. Sometimes it's every other day. Really depends on the seed starting mix that you use and how much moisture that retains, right? So keep an eye on your young seedlings. I like to use just a very light, I don't actually use, this is not the greatest example because this doesn't really saturate the soil at all, this little spray bottle thing. This kind of just dusts your plants a little bit. I like to use a watering can that has a nice rainy head on it, right? I want that rainy head to really lightly drizzle the plants, not causing damage to our young planties, our young little starties, and saturating the water, right? You can get fungus gnats. If you start to see little buggies just fluttering around your seed nursery, these little fungus gnats don't eat your food, but they do lay eggs in the soil that can be root feeders, right? So this is where keeping your soil too wet can cause problems for you, okay? So this is what it looks like. They look like they just rotted. And that is probably because there's larvae of the fungus gnats down there in the soil eating the roots of your young plants. They'll look really healthy and then they'll die. So you want to play this game of allowing your soil to dry out, but not so dry that the plants shrivel up and die. It's a crazy game, but I have faith in you. Okay, you can do this. Consistency and observation. You're going to water almost every day. Ideally, you put your nursery somewhere that you're going to pass by. Right? This is not like in a forgotten corner of your house. It's like above your kitchen sink, a place where water is readily available, where you're going to be there at least once a day, right? Even in the bathroom. I've had really good seed starting trays in the bathroom because you're in the bathroom every day to shower and do your business, but it can be a really good place to start. So just make sure it's somewhere that you'll pass by. It's observable at all times. Check the number of days on the chart for germination. Most of our seeds will germinate within 2 weeks. So if you have seeded, let's say broccoli, for example, you seeded them and they're not up in 2 weeks, they're probably not coming up and you should seed them again. Okay, so look at that chart on your seed packs to see how long it takes for them to come up. Like there's an example here on the far left, keep evenly moist. Right? Seedlings emerge in 7 to 14 days. So if they're not up in that 2 weeks, I would seed them again. Okay? Helpful tips. Helpful tips. Air movement. Right? A little bit of air movement. Even just opening the window. If they're in a window, your little seed nursery's in a window, open that window. Make sure that the air is interacting with your young plants. If they're stagnant, if they just sit there, there's no air, they grow really spindly, right? They're very thin, and we want to grow strong starties, right? So air movement, fans, right? A little bit of a fan, like once a day, a fan for 30 minutes, something like that. Blow those little guys around and help them form stronger stems. Labels. Label your seeds. You're gonna want to know what varieties you grew. And I like little popsicle sticks with like maybe a Sharpie written on them or something. Sometimes plastic labels can just blow away. You're going to end up putting this label outside and it has to last throughout a whole winter. Think of that when you get your plant label. Because in 100 days, are you going to remember what broccoli variety you started? If you did 4 or 5 different varieties and you really like one of them, you want that label outside in your garden to tell you that you remember the variety and that you want to try growing it again. All right, so labeling is really important. Okay, where to buy seeds online? There are so many different seed catalogs. We try to support local whenever possible. Do some fun shopping. This is a really fun thing to do, is just go on and just compare the seed catalogs. Type in, you should know your growing zones, right? But ideally, try to buy from like family-owned businesses and local whenever possible instead of supporting big conglomerate seed companies. It just helps kind of keep the world going around. Okay. We talked about the heating mats. These are optional. I would use these more for a winter start. So going into spring, as you do your tomatoes and peppers and zucchini and stuff, I might think about do these because in the month of February, when you would start those, it's colder and it's hard to get up to that 80 degrees. And this keeps them at about 80 degrees. It's kind of nice. So I don't think you really need them for the fall starts, but they're not a bad thing to have, and they're really not that expensive, right? Helps keep the temperature right for seed germination. Even if you're not going to grow a winter garden this season, you should do some kind of cover crop, right? So fava beans are something that we can go into depth a little bit more in the future, but cover cropping. Fava beans add nitrogen into your soil. They're like no maintenance, very easy to do. So even if you're thinking, I'm not going to have the time for a winter garden this year, think about doing some sort of cover crop that adds nutrition into your soil while doing nothing, right? So that's a really good choice if you are thinking about planting something but not having to care for the winter. Fava beans are a really good choice. And just as a quick reminder, our last thing here, don't go out there and buy your plants until your garden is ready. Remember, go through that checklist about amending soil and all that stuff. We had this list. We've talked about this a bunch of times, but prepare the site. Make sure that if you have irrigation, adding soil amendments, and then plant your garden, right? So really go through this list and make sure that you're ready to plant. Bringing your plants outside after you've been growing them indoors for, you started your seed nursery, you got like a month or 6 weeks of growing them inside. You want to make sure that stage is set for their success, right? Have some sort of protection handy. Be ready for those plants to go outside instead of just, throwing them out there and saying, oh, whatever happens, happens. Because sometimes the worst stuff will happen, right? So we just got to think about being ahead of the game just a little bit. All right. So thanks again for joining for this one. It is time. It's about that time to be starting your fall seeds indoors. So get on it. All right. And keep following on along. Thanks for joining us.